All right. Hello, everybody. It's so fun to see all of you. Today, I am excited to teach you how to use Thrive Food in your regular recipes that you are used to using. And then I am going to teach you how to Thrivealize a recipe, meaning like how to take one of your favorite recipes and turn it into maybe a meal in a jar, something like that. I just did that to one of my favorite recipes, and I want to show you how to do it. So the first thing that I thought I would show you, there's two ingredients. Well, let's do three. There's three ingredients that I use all the time. Let me just reach and grab it. Onions. You know, we use onions a lot in cooking, don't you? You use onions in your cook, but it's really annoying to have to cut onions all the time. And sometimes you just want things to be quick. So when I am browning hamburger meat or making a soup or whatever, look at this. I just pop that top and I've got beautiful onions. Let me scoop some out and show you. See if you can see them. These are just chopped onions. They're really good. I looked up online, which was not, when you Google stuff, like you just never really know if it's right or not. But I looked up online, like how much, like if a recipe calls for 1 medium onion, how many freeze-dried onions do you use? And I saw everything from a half of a cup of freeze-dried onions to 2 cups. So here's what I know. I saw that and I was researching all over the place, and I'm not even sure. It probably says it right here on the back of the can, but I didn't look there. No, I don't see it exactly. Add a 1/3 cup of water to 1 cup of onions and let it sit until tender, or simply toss into any creation. Yeah, that doesn't really explain. And so what I have learned from using it is that if something calls for a half a cup, like 1 medium onion, I use about a half a cup of onions, and it works great. It tastes right in my recipes. It's not too overwhelming. There's plenty of it. And so that's what we're going to go on. Just get that in your mind. If something calls for a half a cup of diced onions, then you use a half a cup of freeze-dried onions. If it calls for 1 medium onion, just go for a half a cup of freeze-dried onions. Okay.
I have this cute magnet that I bought ages ago. Can y'all see this? It stays on my refrigerator. It has all the conversions, and it says onions, chopped onions. You do a 1/3 of a cup of the freeze-dried product with 3/4 cup product with 3/4 cup water, 3 to 5 minutes, and it's 1 cup, which is a half of a large onion.
That's great. And I love that chart, and I have that.
I love it.
I do. Yeah, that's good. I think it helps you have a ballpark, but you can, a medium onion, it depends. A medium onion could be this big to somebody, or it could be that big, depending on what kind of onions you're talking about. So to me, it's all just kind of whatever. So that's why I do love that chart. I've seen that chart before. But cooking with it is that's how I learn it the best, is just doing it myself. Okay. So that's what I've learned about onions. So that's our rule for onions, what we're going to do. Stick that back over there. And then another thing that I use all the time and I love is this, the chicken bouillon. Do any of you use this chicken bouillon? If you don't have this, wow, you really, really should get some. This chicken bouillon, it's 1 teaspoon of bouillon to 1 cup of water. It gives you like 1 cup of chicken stock or chicken broth or whatever. And I'm just going to show you how easy that is. But it's very salty because bouillon is salty. But a can like this goes a long way. Carrie asked, how can we get a copy of Vicky's chart? I think that chart may still be in your back office. So we'll double check that. Okay. We'll make sure we can find that still. But this chicken bouillon is amazing. It's also a vegetarian chicken bouillon in case there are people who can't have meat for any reason. There's no GMO in, I think it is non-GMO. Yeah, it's gluten-free. I don't know about non-GMO, but it is gluten-free. And that's really important to a lot of people. And there's no monosodium glutamate in here, which I think is awesome. You can hardly find a good, yummy bouillon that does not have that in it. Most do, And so this chicken bouillon is one of the best bouillons. And so let me show you really quick. I have a little pitcher of water here. I made it. I made this little pitcher of water in my pottery studio. I'm just going to take 1 cup of water and I'm going to do a teaspoon of this beautiful bouillon. If you can see, it's just like it's not granular, it's more powder like, okay? It's more powder like. So I'm just going to take a teaspoon of it and put it in here. Then I'm going to stir it up. And now I have, and it stirs, it'll break up really good. If I had a little whisk, it would be better and it will break up. But now I have a cup. See how good that is? That was just 1 teaspoon. And I can use that in any recipe that calls for a cup of, a cup of, what is it called? Like chicken stock or chicken broth or something like that. Now I have it. It's really good. So I just wanted y'all to see how easy it is to use this product. And they have beef too. They also have the beef.
Mom, can I say something about that?
Sure.
That I love that stuff. I go to use like regular chicken bouillon, and I honestly don't like the taste. I think Thrive's chicken bouillon has a way better taste. It's more like potent, I guess you could say. I haven't bought regular chicken bouillon for years. That's the only one I'll use. And I try to use other stuff and I don't like it.
Yeah, it is super, super good. Yeah, it's super good. And it does tell you the recipe on the back for 1 teaspoon of bouillon to 1 cup of water. It's just so simple. If you do not have that in your storage, definitely get some. Put 1 in your pantry and put a few away for storage because it is the best bouillon you'll use and it's healthier than most bouillons. So just wanted you to know that. My other favorite base thing to have in your pantry is tomato powder. Now, do you know how to use this tomato powder? It is amazing. Let's look at it real quick. You see this? Look at that. It's just a powder. It's a tomato powder. It's just smells good. You can use it in a million different ways. Now, I totally laughed when I read the back of it because it gives great information here, but it says, you can use this to make tomato paste, tomato sauce, or tomato juice. And so on the back of it, it says 1 cup of powder plus 2 cups of water is 3 cups of paste. Unless you're canning something and you need a whole bunch of, like you never use a lot of paste, right? So that's really a sweet little directions they gave us, but I would be willing to bet. Now I'm glad. Okay. I think a man wrote that. That's what I'm saying. I think a man put those instructions. They're good, but we don't need 3 cups of paste ever, like ever. Even 1 little can like that, those little tiny cans, like we open it up and take a spoonful out and then we throw it away 2 weeks later once we just realize it's gone bad in the fridge. But that's what is amazing about this. And let me show you. I'm not going to figure out, I'm not going to sit there and divide it down to see what we need. I tried for a little bit and just laughed. Anyway, if you do a 1/2 cup of water and a 1/2 cup of powder and a 1/2 cup of water. Oh, I said it wrong. A 1/2 cup of powder and a cup of water, you get a 1/2 cup of paste. That's getting better, right? But look, if you just put some powder in and then you pour some water in, you just have to test it around a little bit. Just test it. And then you just stir it. Now, this is a terrible little container to stir it in, but check this out. You kind of just can get the feel for it. Now look, I have paste. You see that? I have paste. I can use that in any recipe that calls for paste. If I need a little bit more than that, I can mix up a little bit more. You see how you don't need a recipe? Do you see what I'm saying? If you just need a tablespoon of paste, well, take maybe about a tablespoon of that powder, mix a little bit of water in it. If you need a little bit more water, add a little bit more water. But look at that. I have beautiful tomato paste that I can use. Okay. Now, if I want to make it, if I just want to make sauce, I did take their recipe for sauce and I broke it down. The recipe says you're going to love this one too. 1 cup of powder plus 4 cups of water gives you 5 cups of sauce. Well, isn't that a nice little thing for them to tell us? But I broke it down and kept dividing down to 1/4 cup of powder plus 1 cup of water would give you 1 1/4 cups of sauce, which is about, what is that? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know how many, it's like 10 ounces of sauce, which sometimes recipes call for an 8-ounce can of sauce, right? So I just wanted to show you. And then if you just mix that up, well, I don't have a measuring cup. Here we go. This was what I wanted to show you, kind of spur of the moment. And then if I put, that was about a 1/4 cup of powder. And then I have a cup of water. All right. Then we're just going to mix this up. And then I'll have a beautiful container of tomato sauce that I can use. And it's really good, y'all. It tastes good. It smells good. And it's one of the easiest, best ways to store tomato products right here. This is it. So I love that. So I just wanted to show you that. So with that in mind, I want to show you how I put together a really great recipe that I love. Let me just share my screen. So here's a recipe that I have been making and I absolutely love it. It's a creamy tortellini soup. It's delicious. And I just looked at all the ingredients. I'm like, I could do all of this with Thrive. And so what I did was I created a meal in a jar of this recipe that I want to show you. Okay, but let me just kind of go through this with you really quick. So let me do this. So I took the tablespoon of olive oil. You don't need, because they just wanted you to throw that in the pan and brown your sausage with it. Well, we don't have to brown the sausage. Let me just show you really quick. So I took the sausage, 1 pound of sausage. Now I double the recipe and I just use 1 pound of sausage for the double recipe, and there's plenty of sausage in it. So I just thought, well, we'll just try 1 cup of freeze-dried sausage. And then I looked at the cloves of garlic. About a 1/2 teaspoon of minced garlic is a clove of garlic that I've heard, and I like more garlic. So I ended up putting 2 teaspoons of the minced garlic in my recipe. And then here's 1 medium sweet onion. Well, I did a 1/2 cup of freeze-dried onions, work great. It says 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. You can just do that right straight across the board. It just said salt and pepper to taste. I did a half a teaspoon of salt, and I actually did a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And then 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And that's just to kind of thicken the liquid. They want you to kind of stir that in with your browned meat and onions. And then it kind of helps thicken the liquid. So I went ahead and just put that in my recipe. 4 cups of chicken stock. Aha, we can do that because we have the chicken bouillon. So I did the recipe. I changed that to 4 cups of water plus 4 teaspoons of chicken bouillon. Okay, so in my meal in a jar, I'm just going to put the 4 teaspoons of bouillon, and then we add the water when we're ready to cook it. And then this one says 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. Well, I tried to, because I just like to do it how I like to do it and don't really care about what a recipe says. I did 2 tablespoons of tomato powder at first, and then I cooked it and I thought I want 1 more tablespoon of tomato powder. So now I've adjusted this recipe to 3 tablespoons of tomato powder. And then it calls for dry tortellini. And you know what that is, right? It's just this dry tortellini. I'll show it to you a little bit more. So the 9-ounce package is about 3 cups shaken down. So it's about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of dry tortellini that you can put into the jar. From this 9-ounce bag that I had, no, this is like a 12-ounce bag. I made 2 of these, 2 of the meals in a jar with this 12-ounce bag. Okay. And then it says it says a 1/2 bunch of kale. Well, I love spinach too, and I had a bunch of spinach, so I just used spinach in my recipe when I was making it. But you could use kale or spinach, the freeze-dried version, in your meal in a jar, whichever one you want. And then at the end, you're supposed to stir in some heavy cream and fresh basil. And I love the heavy cream. And so I probably, when I'm going to make it, I'll make my meal in a jar and then I'll stir in a little bit of that heavy cream just in the end because it's so good. But if I was camping or something, I thought, well, I could have a little bit of sour cream powder in that meal in a jar, or some bechamel sauce, which is the white cream sauce, or you know, anything like that. So, but I thought those were good options to use. And then for the fresh basil, I love the flavor of the basil in the soup. So I just put a tablespoon of the dried basil. I think it actually only needs about a half a tablespoon after making it. And then the sausage that I usually like to put in here is just the Jimmy Dean hot sausage. And so I wanted a little bit of that hotness, so I added red pepper flakes. So do you see how I took a recipe that I've been making and I turned it into a delicious meal in a jar? And I want to show you that. So give me 1 second and I will switch over to the other screen. Okay, give me thumbs up if you can hear me now. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. So here's the soup. It's not hot anymore. So it's got that cold look to it. This is a delicious soup that I made. I mean, that looks pretty darn good. It's got sausage and spinach and all kinds of goodies in there. And the onions and the tortellini turned out so delicious. Fix something. There we go. All right, so to make the meal in a jar is very simple. And you could take that recipe and half it and stick it in the smaller jar. Like that would be so easy to do, the pint jar. So that would be so easy to do, but we'll just start with this. The first thing I'm going to do is put a cup of sausage in the bottom. And then I'm going to do a half a cup. Where did I put it? Half a cup. Well, I don't know where it is. Okay, we'll do a half a cup of onions. Hold on, I just made a mess and wet everything over there with the water that I was mixing. Let me wash that out. Oh, here it is. Okay, so now we have a half a cup of onions that I'm going to put in there. And then I went ahead and pre-measured these out just to make it easy. But I have 1.5 teaspoons of garlic, and I love garlic, so I actually added just a tiny bit more. I have 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. I have 1 tablespoon of basil. You can add as much of these as you like, actually. And then this 2 tablespoons of flour just helps kind of thicken the sauce a little bit. And then I have the half of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 a teaspoon of pepper, and then I just took a pinch of the red pepper flakes in there. So we'll pour that in. Now, I'll tell you what I love to do. When I'm doing meals in a jar, I tap them on something. I tap the jar to make sure everything gets settled a little bit. Okay, the next thing that we are going to put in there is our tomato powder, and it says 3 tablespoons of tomato powder. Let's just do that. I love this tomato powder. Just look at it. So there's 1, 2, 3. So easy. We can give it a little tap if we want to. And now we have, let's see, do I want to go? Oh yeah, the 4 teaspoons of the chicken bouillon. Now, if you are sensitive to salt, you can take some salt out of it. You don't have to put the half a teaspoon of salt that I've already put in it, okay? Because the chicken bouillon is going to give flavor, but it also gives salt, okay? So now we need a half of a cup of spinach or kale, and kale's on sale this month, which is really yummy. And there's a lot of extra nutrients, I think, in the kale, so that's good. Now, at this point, all we have left to put in there is the dry tortellini. But I thought, well, let's try some of this too. This is the bechamel sauce. It's just a creamy white sauce. And I thought, well, that could give us some good creaminess to it. We could also do sour cream powder, but I don't have sour cream powder open. So I'm just going to do some of this. If I still want to stir in that fresh cream afterwards, I can after I've cooked it. Okay, now I'm going to give it a good tap because I'm going to get as many tortellini in there as I can. And we'll tap it again. And I'm going to fill it to the rim. Okay, Okay, and now I will put a lid on. And I have taken my favorite recipe, and now I have a meal in a jar that I can use anytime. Now, how much water? In my recipe, I had 8 cups of water plus that 1 cup for the tomato powder. So in my recipe that I would write up, I would say dump this into a jar, well, actually, when I made it, I decided this. I wanted to bring 9 cups of water to a boil, then dump this in there and boil it for 10 minutes because that made the pasta perfect. Okay. So isn't that so simple? How easy is that to be able to take a recipe that you already love, turn it into a meal in a jar? Now, what I love about this, my husband will make this while I'm gone to Kristen's or gone somewhere. He will make this while I'm visiting grandbabies, and he'll have something yummy and nutritious. He could add, you can throw other vegetables in this soup if you want to. He would probably throw some, I don't know, broccoli or who knows. He just loves lots of veggies, but he would throw veggies in there even with it. But that is how simple it is to take a recipe and turn it into your own meal in a jar. Okay. Do you have any questions about that? I'm going to try to turn this up so you can talk to me. Do you have any questions? How easy was that? And remember when I showed you how to make the, we did a taco soup meal in a jar. I just took my favorite taco soup recipe and I just added all the ingredients, the dry ingredients from Thrive. That's all I did. Pretty easy. Okay, well, that's all I really wanted to show you today.
Melissa,
yes, ma'am.
have you figured out the cost of that? Like when you did put all those ingredients in, what would be the cost of that soup?
I haven't figured it out, but I could figure it out. And there are some meal in a jar calculators on Etsy, I think. You can go look at that. I'm not sure if there's updated versions of that or not, but I do know that there are people who have created those. But this is how I always figured it out. The most expensive thing is the meat, right? And so when I was figuring out a meal in a jar, like say for instance, this taco soup, when I did it, I think I measured out how many cups of meat were actually in there, and say it was 11 or 12. We'll just say it was 12. Okay. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a batch of taco soup I'm going to make 12 of them because 1 can of the meat will give me 12 jars. And then I just went from there and I would make a batch. So if I was making this for myself, and like I would probably line up 5 or 6 or 10 jars, and I would make a whole batch of these at one time. And they will last a while. You can vacuum seal them. If you have a vacuum sealer, that helps the ingredients stay fresher longer. But let's remember that all the food in here is shelf stable. All of it is shelf stable. You have about a year to use it. One thing that I've noticed is that tomato powder will go hard sometimes. So don't ever put tomato powder in the bottom of your jar, because it can get stuck in there and you can never get it out ever, no matter how much you even soak it. I've tried. Ask me how I know that. Is because this has happened to me. Okay. So just put your tomato powder with your spices and kind of let it sift down. Sometimes I let it sift down like through the noodles or whatever, but that's a good way to go. I don't know. I was on a tangent to tell you something, but I forgot what exactly it was that I was saying.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Talking about the tomato powder, when it hardens in the can, is there any way to unharden it? Do you just beat it up put it in a Ziploc bag and beat it up with a?
Well, it is the nature of tomato powder to clump up. It just is. That is the nature of it. And so Thrive has done a really good job of trying to get it right so it doesn't do that. They've even sometimes put it in they've sealed it in a Mylar bag first and then sealed it up in here in the can. So they've done that. So if it does get hard, I used to because that's happened to me before, especially when I was using tomato powder from another company. actually so far not from Thrive. I mean, look at that. There's no clumping. This isn't clumping at all. My whole can is great. But if it did, I just took like a fork and I would scrape it. Or
Okay.
take a knife and dig out a chunk, and you can kind of like grate it up or rub it on a small little grater or something, but it's still totally usable if it gets hard like that, unless it's completely solidified in the bottom of your jar that you end up having to throw away. But tomato powder is just incredible. Like, it's incredible. Love it.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just looked up the bouillon, and of course it's sold out, or you can only get a 10-pack. But I was wondering if Life could do something like other companies do, where if something's sold out, you have a little notification that says, let me know when it's back in stock, because so many times things.
Yes,
I
so
want
as board members, that's
unavailable.
something that we've asked for all of us. And they just have to be able to build it into the system. But they've just rebuilt their whole entire system, and there's still really important things that they are still trying to make sure are perfect and get the little bugs and kinks out. But I think that that is something that will be put in the system in the future coming up.
Okay.
So
What about rain checks?
they
Like if
don't ever, they're not, they don't, that's not part of their policy to do rain checks.
They just always say while supplies last.
It's, yeah, while supplies last. Okay. I can't see who's raising their hands. And so if I see a little hand being raised, but I can't tell who it is on my phone. So any other questions about that? So just let me say one more thing. So I would like to challenge all of you to use your food. Open up a can of something and start using it in your recipes. If you use onions a lot when you're cooking, open up a can of onions, just start using it, see what you think about it. If you have a recipe a soup, like soup is so easy to use with Thrive. If you have a favorite minestrone recipe that you're using, but you're really hesitant on using it, well, try a little of the tomato powder. You can pour some of your canned sauce in there if you want to, but try a little tomato powder, see what you think about it. Just try it, and then open up those onions and throw some in there and see what happens. Throw some green chilies in something when you're cooking it or using it. I tell you what will shock you, open up your broccoli and throw that into your minestrone, and then you eat that and you'll go, wow, I can't even tell that it didn't start off. I mean, that it started as freeze-dried food and not the broccoli that's just sitting in my fridge. So that's my challenge to you, is to go try all of that. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're putting your recipe together, every time, like if you need, a half a cup of water to do the onion and you need 4 cups to do the bouillon, you just keep adding that up. And that's where you came up with the 9 cups of water for that recipe in the quart jar.
So my recipe called for 4 cups of, what was it? 4 cups of like chicken stock.
Right.
And so I thought, is that what it called for? Oh, I double it. I might have made it wrong. I just look at all the liquid. I don't need a 1/3 cup if you're making soup, you don't have to count the water for everything. Just add a little extra water in. But what I did was I did 8 cups of water, because I usually double this recipe. And so that's where my mind was, for the 8 cups of the stock that I was going to put in there. And then my 1 cup of sauce. So that was 9 cups for me.
Okay.
So I have to go back and look at my actual recipe and see. I may have figured that wrong, but I can tell you something. It turned out great. Like, the extra water was really, really, really good in this recipe. Like, that's actually what it needed, was extra water, because everything's dry. And that dry pasta, that soaks in a lot more than like the fresh, like this is that hard, crunchy tortellini, that's the hard, dry tortellini. It took up a ton more water than my fresh tortellini would take up. So I'm glad that I made a mistake and doubled the water, because I needed it in this recipe.
Thanks.
Any other questions about how to Thrivealize, how to put this food in your regular recipes? If you have one, let me know. But I was thinking about one time I tried to throw mushrooms on my pizza. I thought, oh, I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff, bunch of veggies, peppers and onions and mushrooms on my pizza. But I didn't put enough sauce on it. And so everything was just a little crunchy, you know? So sometimes it's good just to throw your veggies in a bowl, put a little water with it for just a minute or two while you're doing something else. Just let it soak up some water, then grab those peppers or the mushrooms, whatever, and throw those on your pizza. Let them drain just a little, but throw those on your pizza. But if you're sticking something in a soup, you do not need to calculate all the water. Just the first time you make it, you'll realize how much water you probably will need.
Okay.
Because you just think, oh, I need to add some more. This is too dry. And you add some more. But we did a recipe like that. We didn't have enough water. And then we looked at it. We're like, wow, this is a beautiful skillet meal. And so we loved it with half the water because it was more like I'll call it a hamburger helper, but you know what I mean? Like a skillet meal, 1-pan skillet meal instead of a soup. So really you can just do what you want, invent your own recipes. All right, that's all I have for you today. I just wanted to show you that really quick of how to take a recipe and turn it into a meal in a jar so that when you go out of town, your husband doesn't starve or your teenagers have something to eat between meals when you haven't cooked them quite enough food. All right, y'all have a good day. And
Thank you.
yeah, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.